In Canada, we all have the right to believe in and follow whatever religion or ideology we choose.
This is written into our Constitution under Section 2A of the Charter Rights and Freedoms, where it states that everyone has the fundamental freedom of conscience and religion.
This means that you, me, and every other Canadian has the right to hold any religious or non-religious beliefs and express them through practices, worship, or teaching. You cannot legally be forced to act in a way that goes against your beliefs or conscience.
However, there are limitations to this freedom, like many others protected in the Charter. Anyone's ability to externally practice a part of their religion may be restricted if it harms others or interferes with public health or safety.
But these limitations must be prescribed by law,
which means decided fairly by a judge in court,
and be absolutely necessary to protect public safety, order, or health, and the fundamental rights and freedoms of others.
In Canada, to decide if a limitation to a charter-protected right or freedom is justified, courts use a legal framework called the Oakes test, which you'll see in use later.
In religious freedom infringement cases specifically, there are two more questions asked to determine if one's rights have been violated. One is, do you have a sincerely held belief or practice that connects you to your spiritual faith? And two is, if yes, has government action interfered with your ability to act in accordance with your beliefs in a way that is more than trivial?
If these criteria are met, then the case proceeds. If not, they don't consider the issue an infringement on your freedom of conscience or religion.
Now, let's look at some cases where people's religious freedom was limited and how these situations were handled in court.
In Alberta, after 1970, you could get a driver's license without your face on it, if it went against your religion, until May 20th, 2003, when Alberta's government passed a law stating that all forms of ID and licenses must now include a photo.
Hearing this ruling, the Unitarian Brethren, a group of anti-Baptist Christians, were upset because this law forced them to act against their beliefs. The second commandment of their religion is, "Thou shalt not make unto thee graven image," which means that taking a photo of themselves is a sin.
The Unitarian Brethren decided to dispute this law in court, and in 2009 began their first trial. The Unitarians argued that being forced to have their photo taken violated their freedom of religion, quoting Section 2A of the Charter.
The government of Alberta argued that the photo requirement was necessary to prevent identity theft and protect the integrity of the driver's license system. They claimed that without photos, it would be much easier to use another person's license or create fake IDs.
The Supreme Court used the Oakes test to decide whether this limit on freedom of religion was reasonable and justified in a free and democratic society.
The court agreed that the rule did limit the Hutterites' freedom of religion, because being forced to take a photo went directly against their sincerely held beliefs.
They also agreed that the government's goal, protecting public safety and preventing fraud, was very pressing and substantial, and that requiring photos on all driver's licenses was a reasonable and effective way to achieve that goal.
Next, they decided that although the rule limited the Hutterites' freedom, it did not stop them from practicing their religion in other ways, and therefore was a minimal impairment. It only affected their ability to drive a vehicle, which is not considered a basic right, and the safety benefits outweighed the harm to the Hutterites.
Because the law did pass the Oakes test, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the government of Alberta. The photo requirement stayed in place, and the Unitarian Brethren had to choose between following their religious beliefs or getting a driver's license.
The Alberta v. Unitarian Brethren of Wilson Colony 2009 case is significant because it shows us how courts balance individual rights with the broader needs of society, like public safety. It also demonstrated that even fundamental freedoms like religion can be limited when there's a strong enough reason supported by law.
Another case where a limit on religious freedom was questioned is Multani v. Commission Scolaire Marguerite Bourgeois, decided by the Supreme Court of Canada in 2006.
The case began when a 12-year-old Sikh student named Gurbaj Singh Multani accidentally dropped his kirpan, a small ceremonial dagger that baptized Sikhs must wear, at his school in Montreal.
This worried the school board, and they decided to ban him from wearing it, stating that it was a safety risk and violated the school's zero-tolerance policy on weapons.
Multani and his family argued that the ban violated his freedom of religion because wearing the kirpan is a sacred part of Sikh identity. The case eventually went all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada, where the justices had to decide whether the school's ban was a reasonable limit on religious freedom.
The court agreed that the safety in schools is important, but that the total ban went too far and was quite unfair. There were less restrictive ways to keep the students safe, like letting Multani wear the kirpan sewn into his clothing or secured in a sheath.
In the end, the court ruled in Multani's favor, deciding the ban unjustifiably violated his religious freedom.
This case is important because it shows us that protecting religious freedom sometimes means making reasonable accommodations instead of banning a practice completely.
So, unlike the Hutterian Brethren case, here the individual's right to religious freedom won, reminding us that limits on charter rights must always be justified and reasonable.
Unfortunately, not everyone in the world has the freedom of conscience and religion.
In Afghanistan, especially since the Taliban regained control, millions of people live in fear of religious persecution. Islam is the dominant religion, and anyone who openly practices a different faith or challenges their extremely strict religious rules can face severe punishment. As a result, many people must hide their beliefs to stay safe.
Women, in particular, are restricted by extensive range of rules, justified by the Taliban's interpretation of Islam, tearing down their rights to expression, health, and life. For people who wish to practice a different religion, or simply express their beliefs freely, life constantly feels unsafe, unfair, and extremely restrictive.